사람과 지구를 위하도록 기업을 선도하는 마케팅 활동가이자 18년 이상 경험의 브랜딩 및 지속 가능성 전문가인 토마스는 글로벌 굿버타이징 운동의 창립자로서 동명의 베스트셀러 굿버타이징으로 전 세계적 명성을 얻고 있습니다. 서스테이너블 브랜드를 비롯 TEDx, D&AD 등 70개국 이상에서 강연을 하고 있는 토마스는 가디언, 에드위크 등 여러 출판물의 칼럼니스트로도 활동 중이며 브랜드 혁신 전문기관인 굿버타이징사를 설립, 운영하고 있습니다. 브랜드 목적 분야에 대한 최고 전문가이기도 한 토마스는 최근 많은 기업들이 해양 플라스틱에서 다양성 이슈에 이르기까지 사회 및 환경 문제 해결을 브랜드의 목적으로 추진하고 있으나 때론 이러한 활동이 더 많은 소비를 불러일으키기 위한 마케팅 수단에 그치는 점에 대해 경고합니다. 오늘 강연은 그의 최근 저서인 더 히로우 트랩을 바탕으로 브랜드가 지나친 목적 지향형 마케팅에 매몰되지 않고 소비자들의 지속 가능하고 긍정적 행동 변화를 일으키는데 집중해야 함을 강조합니다. 그럼 토마스의 강연을 박수로 맞이해 주시기 바랍니다.
Hello everyone, hello Mingo, thank you so much for introducing me. I'm so happy to be here or online or virtually at Sustainable Brands South Korea. You know, I'm really bummed that I couldn't be there with you in person because I was there the very first time you had a Sustainable Brands South Korea event. I guess that's going to be 2 to 3 years ago, and I really enjoyed Seoul. I really enjoyed South Korea, all the innovation, the hospitality, all the inspiring and nice people I met. Some of you might actually be watching this right now, so a big hello to you as well. And I'm very pleased to share the news with you all, because some of you might remember that I wrote a book about a decade ago called Good Advertising that sparked a movement within itself that rallied for a new period in advertising, where it's not just about selling more, where it was not just about pushing once, but truly about solving needs, so wordplay on good and advertising. But this time I have a new book out called The Hero Trap, and in this book I go up against my earlier held beliefs and purpose. So very excited to share this with you here today. As some of you might know, I'm also the director of the Good Advertising Agency, and we work in the intersection between sustainability and marketing. We also do lots of educational programs, webinars, masterclasses, and obviously work with a lot of big Fortune 500 companies around the globe. So you can reach much more about that at thomaskolster.com or thegoodadvertisingagency.com. But anyways, let's dive into the presentation. And why did I write a new book? Why the need for a new book? But I really felt the landscape had changed a lot since my first book, Good Advertising, where you had lots of examples of purposeful brands like Dove, like Ben & Jerry's, like Patagonia. But it does seem like a lot have happened since then. Because if you look at the marketing landscape today, it looks a little bit like this. All these brands being incredibly busy about showcasing all the good stuff they're doing, giving themselves compliments for all the good stuff they're doing, saying, hey, look at me, we're doing something for the sea turtles. Look at me, we're fighting rampant carbon emissions. And I feel like basically today you can't go into a supermarket without every brand pitching itself as Mother Teresa or Gandhi. So how to know who is more authentic? How to know who to trust? And it's almost turned into a screaming competition where everybody is trying to outcry each other for saying, I care the most. And sorry for the analogy, but it does seem a little bit banal. Because think about it. If I went into a bar and kicked open the door and I screamed, hello everyone in the bar, I'm the world's best lover, I'm quite certain that at some point somebody in that bar is going to figure out that I'm not. And the same is very, very true when it comes to purpose. Because if you stand up on that hero's pedestal and scream, I'm gonna save the world, at some point somebody is criticizing you for not doing enough, for not going far enough. And remember, I said I used to be a big believer in purpose. And I don't think there's anything wrong with having and wanting to play a more meaningful role in people's lives. What's wrong is our current approach to purpose. You know, the way that we ask why. Why do we exist in this world? A navel-gazing why that looks inside out as an organization. And I think that's plain wrong. And I call that a hero trap. And let me give you an example. If you really and truly listen to what Patagonia is saying. Patagonia is saying, we're in the business to save our home planet. I mean, listen to that. We're in the business to save our home planet. That sounds some pretty self-important bragging stuff to say. If you think about it, it's a company that's basically selling t-shirts to people on a stock in a one-bedroom apartment in Brooklyn. And there they are claiming that they are gonna save the world. So maybe no wonder that people are starting to lose the faith in some of these companies' big, bold claims. So it's almost like purpose has become a word that's too good for its own good. And I'm not saying that what Patagonia is doing is wrong, but what I'm saying is that if you copy what Patagonia is doing, you most likely will run into a hero trap, because Patagonia is a legacy brand. They can get away with most stuff, like Apple. And people are growing increasingly tired of all this purpose nonsense, of all this world bettering nonsense. So I think a new approach is needed, because the majority of people are growing tired of all these efforts. And remember why we did them in the first place. In the first place, we most likely did them because we could feel there was this disconnect between people and brands. The people didn't really feel that brands were living up to their role in society. So suddenly we're all screaming about our role in society. And the only thing we're seeing is this growth in cynicism. More and more people becoming skeptical about all the efforts that you guys are doing. So we need a fundamental different approach. We need a fundamental different approach. Also because it does seem like the way that we are approaching purpose today isn't really working the way that it should be working. And I know that I've been touting the business case for purpose for quite some time. But yet still there's a disconnect between what people say and what people do. So if we look at this graph, and this is from a report called the Good Life Report that's done by Sustainable Brands Global. So have a look at the report, lots of interesting findings. But in the report, they find that 65% of people say they want to buy from purposeful companies, but only 26% actually follow through. So there's an interesting gap of 39% of people. So there's this gap between intent and action. So how can we bridge that gap? But maybe it's not surprising that this gap exists. I mean, you probably all know Homer Simpson, right? This American cartoon character that's crazy about eating donuts, right? And so often he's stuck between this dilemma between what he wants to do and what he actually ends up doing, eating donuts. And that's exactly something that I think we can all relate to. I don't know if you do New Year's pledges. I mean, I do them once in a while because I think, like you, there are certain things that I want to change in my life. Certain things that I aspire towards. You know, maybe living healthier, maybe go for a run just after the cold winter. So this is really the dilemma of the New Year's pledge, you know. The New Year's pledge is really most often the beginning to bad old habits. So just a little bit into January, just a little bit into me promising myself that I want to go for a run, the sneakers are still lying there in the corridor. And that's exactly also what is proven in that gap between intent and action. It's so difficult to create change. And that's also why I think we need a new approach to creating change. Because in fact, we are our own biggest barrier to the change that we want to see in our lives. Our own biggest barriers to the change that we want to see in our lives. And I'm sure that you can recognize that. For those of you who smoke, you can definitely recognize that, right? Because if you smoke, the only one who can put an end to those cigarettes are you. There's no health messages, there's nobody else who can do it besides you. So it's time that we take a new approach to change. And I'm going to share one example of a company I think is quite interesting. Because one of the things that I wanted to change in my life was actually to pivot to a more plant-based diet. To pivot toward eating more vegetarian and more vegan. And one of the companies that I interviewed for my new book, The Hero Trap, was a company called Kolster, or Seasons in English. And I interviewed the CEO, and he talks about something fundamentally different. He talks about something he calls earth connection. Earth connection. It's something that you have to find within yourself. That connection with the earth, the vegetables. And he shares, for example, one event that they do in the bigger cities in Denmark. And when you harvest beetroot, how people look at the fingers colored red. So this connection between what you do and how, by learning how to cook, you connect more with the fresh vegetables. So basically what they do is that they deliver this box of farm fresh produce to my doorstep, but also come with the recipes. Recipes that's put together by chefs working at Seasons. So they helped me on my journey to become a more and a better plant-based chef. And obviously I embrace that. And most of the time, next slide, I do a beautiful vegan pie that looks a little bit like this, and I'm happy, and I share it with my friends, and most of the time I take a picture on Instagram, I share it with the whole world. That relative change though is quite often somehow different. Next slide. It looks a little bit more like this, right? A failed attempt. But isn't that the thing about change that's so beautiful? That it's so difficult to create the needed change. So I think it's about time that we create brands and we create leadership that doesn't behave like preachers. That doesn't scream, we believe in this. That doesn't go the brand activist way and say, this is white, this is black, this is what we believe. But instead take an approach where they act as a coach, as somebody who's helping me achieving the things that I want to see in my life. And I could give you one example. I mean, I come from Denmark. It's a bicycle crazy nation. And I remember the very first time I had to ride a bicycle. The very first time. And in the beginning, I had these support wheels of a bicycle because I didn't know how to keep the balance. But the first time I let go of those support wheels and my dad pushed me in the back and I could ride that bicycle all by myself. That's exactly how brands should be behaving today. They should be that little push in the back. So I think the marketplace is changing. I think the marketplace is moving towards what I call a post-purpose era. Because for the many decades in advertising, it was about functional benefits and it was about emotional benefits. It was about trying to sell people a car by claiming it had some higher functional benefits or emotional benefits, like when you draw a BMW, you'd feel more like a man. Then obviously we went into the purpose era, where it was about being and showcasing the role your brand played in society. So for example, being in a more environmentally friendly car like the Prius. And this was where my latest book, Good Advertising, stopped. But in my new book, The Hero Trap, I obviously claim that we are approaching a new era, a new post-purpose era, where people are not buying why you do what you do, because when everybody's claiming to have a higher why, to play a higher role in society, who to trust? So in the post-purpose era, it's really about who you can help people become. It's about delivering a concrete change in people's lives. It's about unlocking healthier lives, more sustainable lives, more connected lives, helping people learn new things, helping them cook plant-based, help them understand to cut down food waste, help them with all these things that is about their dreams and aspirations. And that happens by asking one fundamentally different question than what we've been used to asking ourselves. Because I don't think it's about the why, the navel-gazing why anymore. It's about who. It's about who you can help people become. It's about pushing them towards that change that they want to see in their lives. It's not about your company's goals and dreams and visions. No, it's about mine. It's about what you can do for me, because that's the ultimate proof point. That's where your authenticity is at. That's not just a claim, because I can feel the outcome like I could with seasons. They learned me to become a much better plant-based cook. That's concrete outcome. That's not just bragging. So when we're looking for meaning, when we're looking to create meaning in people's lives, for the most time, we've been looking inside the house, inside our brands. But in fact, where the key to that meaning is actually outside. It's in my life. It's how you can play a pivotal role in my life. So these are two fundamentally different ways of looking at leadership. The one looks at an organization and says, believe in us as the agent of change. The other one looks to the individual as the agent of change. Two different ways. And in fact, young generations today really do see themselves as these agents of change. There's a recent survey that actually do show that 47% of young people today look at themselves as the agents of change. It's the Greta Thunberg generation. So if you want to create a meaningful difference in people's lives, I created a new methodology I call the arrow that asks 4 fundamental questions. The first one is what? So what is it that you do? That might be the product, that might be the service. And that's never a constant. Like take Apple, for example. They're doing iPhones, they're doing laptops, and streaming services. The second question is, how are you unique in delivering that product or service? Maybe you're the fastest. The third question is really the pivotal one. Who can you help people become? What is that fundamental difference that you can deliver in people's lives? Can you make them healthier, wiser, more connected, greener? What is it that you can do truly? Because everybody can claim to have a higher purpose or play a meaningful role in people's lives. This is the real delivery point in this model. And the arrow was, in fact, inspired by psychotherapy and coaching, because those two disciplines are goal-oriented. They move you from intent to action. The last question is when. When can you enable that change? Because change without a deadline is not going to happen. So this is about the imperative. This is about understanding when you can deliver in people's lives. And let me give you one example. Because the outcome of this, I don't call a purpose. I call it a transformative promise. Because it's your promise as a leader or as an organization about a concrete change that you can create in people's lives. So if you take if you look at this company, Discovery, it's a South African company. They're now present in 7 markets. Their transformative promise, their mission, their North Star is to incentivize people to live healthier. So it's not about let's create healthier communities. No, it's very concrete, incentivizing people to live healthier. And they've been extremely good at that because it has a narrow focus on the change that they want to see in people's lives. And they created this program called Vitality. And Vitality rewards, incentivizes the right behavior. So if you go to the gym, you get rewarded. If you buy fruits and vegetables, you get rewarded. And by taking this approach, by having change as your fundamental North Star. You bridge that gap between intent and action. And they created a survey that proves this point. A survey with more than 200,000 people taking part. And in that survey, they showed that people who took part in the Vitality program did exercise 5.2 days more per month. Think about that, 5.2 days per month. So they really succeeded changing people's behaviors. And the business case is pretty clear, because if you as a health insurance company make people healthier, you pay out less in premium. So I think it is pivotal that we take this new approach to purpose and take this new approach to leadership. Also because if you think about what it is that we're trying to achieve, we're trying to create a meaningful difference in people's lives. This is about meaning. This is not about your purpose as an organization. Because by the end of the day, how many do you really know that have this higher purpose? If you look at the people around you, a couple of people maybe that have that burning, almost Nelson Mandela-esque purpose. Not that many, right? But I know a lot of people who play a meaningful difference in my life. Those can be your friends. And some of the best friends are actually those who get the best out of you, who get the better side out of you. But you also have friends that are good for partying. You have friends that are good for relaxing after a long day. So there's so many meaningful roles that you as a brand can play in people's lives. So maybe ask yourself this one fundamental question. What leader, what organization, what brand have really created a meaningful difference in your life? I can share a few of mine. I mean, as I said, årstiderne, seasons, they taught me how to create more or cook more plant-based. Nike had kept me motivated when I was sometimes losing motivation during the cold winter in Denmark. Those are just two examples from my side. I'm sure you have many in your life. But all of these opportunities, all of these are opportunities, all these barriers that people have opportunities to create a meaningful difference in people's lives. And I did a survey I did a piece of research comparing purposeful campaigns with what I call transformational campaigns that created real change in people's lives. So the example I'm going to show you are two of those campaigns. The first one takes a purposeful approach. This was a Budweiser commercial that ran at last year's Super Bowl. And in this commercial, Budweiser talks about how their beer is now brewed either by wind power or by offsetting the carbon emissions from the brewing process. And they talk about this, but it's for a better tomorrow. And I hear a lot of claims in the purpose space, doing good for people and planet, all that stuff, which is not very operational, which is not very motivating. Let me compare that to a campaign from the transformational side. Always. And I'm sure that some of you have seen it. What Always is trying to do here is really to help young girls going from this insecure phase of being a girl to being a woman. And in one of the campaigns, they go up against the phrase "like a girl," because like a girl really is derogative. It means like a girl means that you are weak. And they wanted to change that to a sentence of strength. So this is a survey where we compare 4 purposeful campaigns with 4 transformational campaigns. The transformational campaigns have this little underline underneath it. And as you can see, we test them on 3 parameters. Warmth, so how much people like it, how much fuzziness is in the stomach. Competence, so how competent do people see the brand behind the campaign. And thirdly, motivation, so how motivated do people feel by the message. All of these campaigns are obviously tested. I mean, a lot of them have been airing at Super Bowl, the most expensive advertising break in the world. So on brand warmth, they're basically all doing very, very well. The same with competence, which for me was a bit surprising, because even though the brand in the transformation approach is not talking about itself, bragging about how good it is, people still look at it as very competent. But the most surprising jump that's happening is when you look at motivation. Because On average, people feel 29.4% more motivated by brands that take a transformational approach. And isn't that interesting when we talk about bridging that intent and action gap that we saw in the beginning, those 39%? So here might be a small clue to how to bridge that gap. And more interestingly, I also looked at people's willingness to pay a premium price. And here the findings were also quite interesting, because if you play a meaningful role in people's lives, people are actually more willing to pay for it. And I can recognize that from the case that I shared earlier from Seasons, the food box company, because I could choose probably lots of other providers, but actually Austin play a pivotal and meaningful role in my life. So I don't mind paying a premium. And this graph shows that if you compare, again, transformational campaigns with purposeful campaigns, here on average, 29.6% of people say that they are willing to pay a premium price, so the WTPP. So I think this is exactly what we need to look at if we want to take a new approach to purpose. Because people aren't no longer buying your why, because everybody's claiming to have that why. What they're buying is who you can help them, people become. So let's look at this next slide, because that's exactly the fundamentals of leadership. This is a tweet from a mother who shares this tweet about her daughter teasing her dad and older brother that if they just ran like a girl, they would run faster. And for me, that is really brand heaven, where you can get people to achieve amazing things, when you can help people achieve their dreams, when you can push people towards breaking down the barriers. And we live in such divided times, and I don't think we need more brand activism, brands telling us that this is white, this is black, oh, I believe so much in diversity. No, that's not needed. What we believe today is brands that are there as coaches that helps us, for example, fight our own biases, fight stereotypes, rather than just shouting, we are a super diverse company. So I will encourage you to ask that fundamental leadership question: who can you help people become? Because your leadership is no greater than what you can make people achieve. That's what leadership is about. And not to make this about politics, but all of you obviously know the former US President, Barack Obama, and when he stepped down and he was elected to this platform, yes, we can. But when he stepped down and he was delivering his last speech in Chicago, he said, the campaign, Yes We Can, was not about people believing in him as a president to create the change. It was in fact a rallying cry to each and every one of us to believe in our own ability to create change. And this is exactly what I advocate in my new book. Stop pitching yourself as this world-saving hero. Stop pitching yourself as the one that can sort all the ills of society. Instead, help people become the heroes in their lives. Instead, help people achieve their visions, their dreams. Help them climb that difficult mountain. I know that I provokingly started out with a picture of Jesus, and I'll end up with a picture of Jesus. Because as I said, we are our own biggest barriers to change. So if we want to create and if we want to change the world, we have to start by changing ourselves. So this was all that I had to say here at Sustainable Brands Korea. And if you want to learn more, I'll really encourage you to pick up my new book, The Hero Trap. And you can learn more about the arrow that I shared. You can learn more about the research that I've done. And you can learn more about why I today think that we're moving into what I call a post-purpose era. I also do hope you want to follow me on social media, on LinkedIn. You can watch lots of my keynotes at YouTube. or why not go to my website, thomaskolster.com. I do hope you have a wonderful, wonderful conference, and you will have an opportunity to ask me some questions as well. So great presenting for you, and thank you so much, and hope to see you one day in South Korea. Thank you.